Hello and welcome to another Flightgear tutorial. Today I want to show you the takeoff and landing procedure with the Fokker Dr.1 triplane. So the Dr.1, it's an old warbird from the First World War, and it was the favorite, but not the only plane of the famous Red Baron Manfred von Richthofen. And today I want to show you the startup procedure, and especially the takeoff procedure, which is very touchy, very delicate. The landing is also not easy, but it's easier at least than the takeoff. And in between we can fly around this rock. We're at Gibraltar here. Here you see the Rock of Gibraltar. This is this spectacularly located airfield with this road crossing the runway here with a traffic light and with some barriers. So that's really a cool airport. And so the plan is to take off, fly in a counterclockwise circle around the rock, and then reapproach from the east again on the same runway, and in between do some aerobatics, some loopings and stuff. It's fairly easy with this plane, at least much easier than start and landing. So let's get into the specifics of this plane. Let's zoom in a little. First of all, the Dr.1 has got no wheel brakes. Here you got some chokes. They act as parking brakes, so with shift bravo, not control bravo, you remove them, but they don't have much effect anyway. So the Dr.1 also doesn't have a rear wheel, it only has this spur, which also creates some friction once the tail is here on the ground, so you can use it for slowing down the plane, but you need a lot of runway actually rolling that plane before it comes to a standstill. Then the Dr.1, it has got these two bars here underneath the wingtips, and this is for protection of the wings in case you roll over to either side on takeoff and landing. Another feature is this rotary engine. It's not a radial engine with fixed cylinders, but it is a rotary engine with a fixed crankshaft in the middle of it. And when I press the start button, you will see that the cylinders are actually rotating together with the propeller. See? And this rotating engine, it creates a lot of torque, which is transmitted to the plane's airframe, and so you will feel constant forces here on your plane, which you have to counteract with your rudder and aileron. Also at startup, you have to take this torque into account and counteract accordingly, not to nose over or not to roll to either side during the takeoff procedure. And this is, I think, the most challenging part. Also this takeoff, it was, for me at least, it was the most challenging maneuver among all the different Flightgear airplanes. At least when you're airborne, this Fokker Dr.1 is quite easy to handle. It's very agile. You can do so it's a real dogfight machine, unlike, for example, with the Sopwith Camel, which remains critical all the time, even when it's airborne. Once the Dr.1 is airborne, you can handle it quite easily and effectively. So that's maybe one of the reasons why the Red Baron was so fond of this particular model. So now we go into the startup procedure. I configured two different views, the cockpit view and the model view, and nothing else, so that I can switch between them very quickly, because I at least need both views. For the takeoff, I need the model view, and later in the air, I prefer the cockpit view. And I suggest in the cockpit view, you zoom out completely so that at least you get some idea of the surroundings, because your field of vision is effectively blocked by those wings. But in the air, I find it easier to use the cockpit view. So two things you have to prepare for the start. First, you switch the magnetos to both. Here is the magneto switch, so you push it forward completely, and then the fuel flow tab, you also push it forward completely. This is it. Now we're ready for the startup. look from outside. With the S button, Sierra, you start up the engine. It takes quite some time, at least 10 seconds. And before you do this, you have to at least mentally prepare and also prepare your rudder and stuff, not to go into a very peculiar maneuver right from the get-go. First of all, you give full throttle. You open the throttle completely, because this plane, as it has no wheel brakes, it also does not have throttle control. It's an all or nothing throttle, and the pilot controls the engine power with the Bravo button to activate a blipper, which interrupts the ignition of the engine always for 1 or 2 seconds, and that slows the engine and the airplane down. So in order not to yaw or nose over immediately, first of all, you have to press the stick backward for full elevation. That presses the tail of the plane down onto the runway for more stability. Otherwise, you're bound to nose over immediately. The second thing, you apply left rudder, full left rudder, to counteract the torque of the rotary engine. And the last thing, the aileron also full left. So once again, for recap, full elevator, rudder left, aileron left. In the help menu, there's also a description what you are supposed to do during takeoff, and it differs from the procedure that I found optimal. So you can try it both. You can try it my way, and you can try the description here that you find in the help menu and see which one fits you better. So with this procedure, I had the most numbers of successful takeoffs. Okay, now we go for start, and I keep my index finger on the Bravo button to immediately reduce the engine power with the blipper. So here we start, and it will take some time. And I press Bravo for the blipper. First quite rapidly, and then in longer intervals. And then I release it completely and let the plane have its way. Okay. I change to the pilot's view and still apply full left rudder to counteract the torque of the engine. Once your plane is fast enough, you don't need to apply left rudder. Look at you see, I still apply full left rudder to stabilize the plane, and when it's fast enough, you don't need to do that anymore. You just center the rudder again, you just let it loose, and now the plane is fast enough, around 80, 90 knots, so that you can fly nice and easily. So we will have a go around this Rock of Gibraltar, and I will also show you some simple aerobatics. And this plane is really made for aerobatics and dogfighting. So I use the standard HUD so that I can see my altitude and speed. And the first thing, of course, is a simple barrel roll. So I press the rudder to the left and aileron to the left, and press the stick forward to accelerate the spinning. So that was left barrel roll, now a right barrel roll. Then just some quick turns. This is really where this airplane excels, in quick and tight turns. Rudder left and do a quick and tight left turn. You see, it turns like hell, and that's also how Richthofen described the behavior. It says, this plane, it climbs like a monkey, is what he said. It turns like crazy and climbs like a monkey. So that added to his superiority in dogfight, the specific agility of this plane here. But it was super critical in takeoff and landing. Okay, and now we will also do some loopings. This plane is also very good at loopings. Gain some altitude. Then descend with a 20 degrees angle. and then you can do some loopings. Okay, gain some speed, 20 degrees pitch angle. Once you're fast enough, you pitch up, but gently, don't pull the stick too hard. You can use the rudder for fine-tuning. See? And another one. You can do multiple consecutive loopings, get some speed again, and now we finish with an Immelmann. See? That's quite easy. This plane, as long as you don't pull the stick back too much during the climb of the looping, you will be doing fine. Okay. Now we just go around the Gibraltar Rock, and then we will try the last part of this tutorial, the landing. I hope to get it right this time, not to nose over or to roll over. It's very easy to fail with this plane if you're not fully concentrated. So I think we don't need the HUD for this. Here on the left you can already get a glimpse of the runway again. You can approach the runway in a very extreme angle in a tight turn, but I suggest not to do that. I suggest you take your time and go at a wider angle here, and especially reduce the speed using the blipper. See, this is the blipper function. When I press it repeatedly, it slows down the engine speed more and more, and that's something that is very helpful for the approach. You shouldn't be too fast when you touch down, because the longer the roll phase is, the more likely that something will happen in terms of nose over or roll over. So for the touchdown itself, I suggest you use the cockpit view, but then I switch into the model view again to see. You have to apply the rudder, very delicate rudder input to keep the plane more or less on the center line of the runway. And in the end, when you're slow enough, you press down the tail of the plane with the elevator, and then you can do lateral movements with your aileron once the tail is firmly pressed on the airstrip. Okay, let's slow down. And you stop the engine just by putting the throttle to idle. We'll do that as soon as we're over the runway. Now. Very tiny rudder input. Don't pull the stick back yet. You would lift off again. This plane is so lightweight and has so much lift with the 3 wings that it would lift off immediately. And now I can use the aileron for steering. So as we have no wheel brakes, this sliding, it will go on forever, probably until we ditch into the Mediterranean at the end of the runway. Let's see. We can activate those chokes with Shift Bravo, but I don't think they have too much of an effect. So instead of waiting for the plane to come to a standstill, I will simply pause. So this was our little Fokker Dr.1 takeoff and landing tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this little video. Thanks for watching and see you again next time. Goodbye.